America. It doesn't belong to the government. Doesn't belong to the guy in the White House. Doesn't belong to the legislator. They belong to us. This is our America. Folks, it's your America. Don't let anybody tell you different. If they do, just laugh at them, walk away. They don't know what they're talking about anyway. So anyway, folks, tonight the biggest new part of the news is the power grid throughout our country. Now, here in North Carolina, up in Washington and Oregon, you're seeing the power grid under assault. Now, for those of us in law enforcement, we kind of now we don't kind of we know what that means, and that's a prelude to something bigger and stronger. And it's not it's not going to be for the light of heart, no doubt. But don't let anybody tell you that it's just some kids out there having a good time. It's a little party in the corner of the shed, or they decided to go out and do a drive by and shoot up the power grid. It doesn't work that way. Power grids are a significant part of our structure. To be factual, there are 9 major power grids in this country. 9 major power grids. And remember one thing: if you take out all of those 9 power grids, America's completely in the dark. That's how serious this is. So it's not just a bunch of kids doing drive-bys. It's not a bunch of kids out there, nothing to do. This is an act of terror. Some say, well, it's domestic terror. Yes, because it's on our soil. But who did it? We don't really know. Could be anybody at this point. But I can assure you, if they're found, they should be charged with terrorism. Because what does terrorism do? It strikes fear in the hearts, the minds, the soul, the conscience of everybody who feels terrified with it. If they're in a position where they're worried about their next day, or their children and their schools, or they're worried about medical health facilities, or they're just looking at some of the retirement centers. Don't think that people in other countries don't concentrate on the most vulnerable parts of society, where they can put you running in 3 or 4 different directions and then sneak in the back door. That's what these terrorists train for, folks. And unfortunately, we got somebody in the White House who doesn't seem to care about that. But that's a whole nother issue. But right now, I'm going to bring in my next guest here, and actually my first guest. So it is going to be my next guest, and we're going to welcome in here in just a second. Jerry Elliott, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, buddy, long time no see. I'm doing well.
Yeah, doing great, doing great. I knew you'd come in when I gave you a call and see if you want to talk, because you and I got a lot in common, and that's kind of running in the same circles of law enforcement. So we've been there, done it, seen it. We've had some things happen along the way. Some
One or
news,
two,
some not.
but
Some of
good
it had made
stories
the news.
nonetheless, right?
Oh yeah. So as you see, when I talked to you earlier today, I told you where I was going with this show, and I think it's significant, especially what's going on in the it's in the grid. I got to take the stuff out of my pocket, that way I don't look like I'm Pee Wee Herman here. No, I'm not going to do that either. But anyway, um, so when we saw this, I got to thinking about that, and when any kind of training that we get, especially with terror since 911 and all the things that have been going on in our country and throughout the world. One thing that we get a lot of in law enforcement is a lot of training about terrorism and what to be looking for on the home front here. So terror is not always overseas, and it's really brought us to the forefront to where terror is a significant part now. It's everyday life for us. It's you know that cliche, see something, say something. That sounds great, but it's said so much. Nobody's not really seeing anything, and they're not saying anything. Um,
Mm.
it's like anything else. Um, all these other programs they come out with, they're fine. They're programs, but people. It's kind of like when you work in an area that you need to be familiar with people. If you become complacent and things never change, then you'll never see what's changing before you. You have to stay alert, vigilant, and be looking in all the right places at the wrong time and in the right time. It doesn't really matter. You need to be looking as you're moving about, and that's the part of the being safe, but safe for the community too. So, and you know that from some of the jobs that you did. So tell us a little bit about your history, who you are, what you do, anything like that, so the viewers and the listeners that out there know exactly who you are, Jerry.
Sure. Back in '86, I was attending Durham, taking criminal justice, and the Durham County Sheriff's Department came knocking and did some recruiting, filled out the application, and kind of went through the process in late '96 and got 97 and joined the Durham County Sheriff's Office with you. And worked there through until 1992, and then switched over to the Durham Police Department. I was a police officer. I did a little bit about everything. In fact, one of the things I said I wanted to do was to actually try everything, and I think you kind of took that. Of us did patrol, we did investigations, you did internal affairs. I wanted to ride a motorcycle. I wanted to ride a bicycle. I wanted to drive a police car. But I really was interested in training. Training was a big. It was a little bit, and I like to think that I did it the right way, and I had some real as I started my career and early in my career had a lot of people get. I thought that I could pass that on and teach officers, so that was my goal. But I worked with the police department until 2010 when I decided. I thought he decided to call me home. I had an incident on duty and ended up being clinically dead for about 6 minutes in my law enforcement career. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was forced to retire. I was not ready to go. I mean, that's what I wanted to do my whole entire life. So that lost my health that day, and I lost my career, which I so loved. And so, man, that took me a long time to kind of get over it. I questioned God, be honest with you, but I could have had a bullet with my name on it, if I was man, Lord only knows what would happen. Well, he does know what would happen, but so I got my PI license after I retired and went on the road PI fraud cases for several different clients, and the retirement community in Chapel Hill. I'm in charge of their security education. Man, I love it to death. It's a lot of fun experience. I got in law enforcement and applied to this career. So I'm having a ball, and good Lord had plans for me. So anyway, a while.
Well, there you go. You know what they say though. Sometimes the best prayer is the one that's never answered. If you think about it, you just don't know. We always want, and we pray. We want, we need, we got to have, or we think about it. And my thing is I've always taken the approach. I don't worry so much about yesterday. I take care of today because tomorrow's coming, and do the best you can to be ready for it and make the decisions you can. And you know what? Just gotta sit there and take what's given you, and take the ride, and hope you get through it okay. And again, I tell everybody else, you can. I'm not bashful talking about. There's more times than not, and I say not very little is that the first thing I think of is, Lord, what have I got going on here? The old adage, if you ever want to make God laugh, tell him what you're going to do. Tell somebody what you're going to do, because there might be some laughter. Yeah, exactly. So I say that all the time, and the guy's like, "Oh, I know, yeah." Of course, I always say you can do. Some of the guys, I guess, they've gotten so used to me saying it, and I've always said it. When you just have that one person who just doesn't want to get on board and do the right thing, and don't want to do what you need him to do, and you may be the supervisor, and you might be part of the human resource process, and you've done everything you can to get some of these folks to do what they're supposed to do, and do for the good of all, and everybody around them, and they don't want to comply. And I've had someone go, "Hey, I'm leaving. I'm leaving. Okay, that's fine. I mean, you're grown. Make those decisions, but always remember one thing: you can do anything you want to on your last day, and that's it. You know, I was like, I probably made some enemies with that one right there, but that's okay. I've had a few anyway. You know, but again, a happy working environment is a better environment when you talk about you enjoy your job, and
Absolutely.
people do what they're supposed to do. Is sometimes you get those disgruntled folks, and the reason I talk about people being disgruntled is when we look at the power grid and what's going on. I There's some disgruntled folks now. What they're disgruntled about? Well, it could be internally. We got some things going on in America that people aren't really happy with right now, and I mean the signs are out there. I mean, don't I would say be very cautious to think um, that things can happen and happen fast. Of course, I'm a law-abiding citizen, and as you are, we're lawmen, and that's what we do. And we don't ever want to see anything go crazy and people getting hurt and things like that. But I tell you, the times now are crazy. I mean, there's people, they're really upset about what's going on, their votes, and rightfully so. I could get all that, but I've never been angry that I wanted to get out there and start injuring people. And but terrorists will. Terrorists, they want to strike fear. They want to strike fear in your heart. They want to come across that border that's wide open for anybody to come across. I mean,
Hmm.
I'd say, dang, Joe, if you want some money, instead of letting them come over free, just put up some ticket booths down there. Go and get all the money you can, because that's all you're going to get out of that. I mean, you're gonna let them come through. Put some arms up down there and line them up. Put them out there. Start. If you're gonna let them come in anyway, at least if you write them a check, you got their name. Make them give you an ID.
Yeah.
Of course, hey, they probably, of course, didn't have it. But anyway,
Remember,
uh,
this is North Carolina. You don't need an ID. Remember?
yeah, exactly. Well, I think we got that new Supreme Court now, so I think that's going to change. And there's a case between the Supreme Court right now about the legislative districts that North Carolina was just heard on,
Hmm.
where North Carolina is not arguing the law itself. They're arguing the fact of the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, basically to say our law is our law, and what gives anybody else the right to change that? Judiciary should not change legislative law. And
Right.
the Supreme Court's had said that several times, but too many times they get a little wacky and they kind of kick back and they punt, or they go a little bit to the left to appease everybody when you're not going to do that. But I think in North Carolina, the Supreme Court always says, well, the Supreme Court of each state usually makes that decision, and we're not going to supersede or overreach. Well, of course, now that it's gone to the Supreme Court through SCOTUS, and now that North Carolina has a majority coming up, they'll have a majority in the Supreme Court. If they haven't already had, I don't know when their swearing in is. Usually pretty good. Usually the first week in December, but that's usually some of your county and local races. But anyway, so the Supreme Court's going to be a big factor this year. Um, and there's going to be another seats up that could easily go conservative. We could end up in the next election with a 7-0 Supreme Court all conservative. We were one vote away from having a super majority this time. So when people talked about there was no red wave, well, North Carolina there kind of was, because there was a lot of Republicans elected, and we were one away from a super majority. And look what we did at the Supreme Court and all the other things that went on. So North Carolina fared out pretty well. It just didn't go. You know, we lost to one seat, but again, it gets back to having a better candidate. Sometimes you can look at a candidate and you look at the commercial and you think, wow, he looked like he just stepped out of a studio somewhere, or they don't, you look at him, you go, look, they look like they just walked. I mean, it was like somebody created this person to put them in there, rigid, they're stiff, they're not flowing, they didn't. If somebody's ever doing a campaign commercial and they don't look comfortable doing it, they're probably not going to get a lot of votes. And I think that one commercial I was watching, I was like, dang, saying all the right things, but dude, you don't, you're out of place. You don't look like don't look like you're feeling it. You don't look like it's that's the moment for you. You know, I was like, well,
Not very
let's see,
convinced.
and it didn't turn out well for him. So, but anyway, so talking about the power grid, so when we talk about terrorism and that does come front center, you know, I guess I would ask, people that are, when you're being diligent, who's going to ride around and just start looking at power grids? The only one's going to do it is going to be your law enforcement agencies. It's not Joe Schmo down the road. It's not going to get and say, "Oh, let me go check out power grids and see things out of place." That's not going to happen. And law enforcement, I remember I always knew, as well as you did, in your areas, you knew where all your critical stations were. You knew where the phone company had their set up. Now most people just saw it over there and didn't know what it was. They had no clue what was behind the fence or what was in there. So we as law enforcement would know these things. So what do? We go out and write our reports. Why? Because we're being diligent. We're right there out of the way, but we are actually checking these areas. And you go on to the next spot and the next spot and the next spot. And that's kind of, I think the public sometimes didn't understand, when we're patrolling, we're not out there always on the main highway running 40 and 50 miles an hour and not dang sure not going that far just to get a cup of coffee, as a lot of people might think. We get on the back roads at night and we go into neighborhoods that you think we never come into, but we're there.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you don't know we're there because that's the time that you're sleeping. So you come through there. That's the way we do it. And that's how you find out what people are up to, what's going on. Because what's the old additive? Nothing good happens after 11 o'clock at night if you're out on the highway.
That's what Mama said.
That's right. And that don't change. You got no business. You got no business out on the highway at 11 o'clock at night unless you're leaving work, going home to or from, or it's an emergency. Other than that, you need to be in and let it be taken. Your kids don't need to be running the streets. They shouldn't have a carte blanche to just do whatever they want to when they want to, and you're in the bed as a parent. So, and unfortunately that happens too much, and we end up with a lot of things going on that affect our children all across America too.
On the news every day, every morning.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, but if you look at you look at society as a whole, a lot of people have a very skewed vision of what's going on, what's really happening out there, and they may be fixated in one topic, one area, one mindset, one thought process, and you can't get them off of it. That's just the way it is. But the reality is, before they know it, sooner or later, something's going to happen and it's going to wake them up. And they're going to have to realize they got to look at the bigger picture of everything. It's just not about, you can't be if you're a father, you can't be a buddy to your son all the time. You can't be a buddy. Parents, I don't care what it says. Parents aren't designed to be your buddy. They're designed to give you the leadership, the structure, the discipline, the knowledge and experience to do the right thing, to make those decisions that count.
Absolutely.
It's like now, and the schools are another thing that, you think about the CRTs in the schools and all the things that are going on. These children get in there and they're told one thing, parents tell them another thing. But the schools spend a lot of time with them. If you think about it, schools spend 7-8 hours a day with them sometimes, 5 days a week. Parent comes home, parents working, paying the bills, coming home. They're having to get into bed, get up the next day. Child's in, they're at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They're probably sitting at home with a little bit of nothing to do, talking to their friends, playing on their Facebook page and everything else. So they don't get the direct supervision, and they get a mind of their own, and they go way out and they listen to all the stuff that goes on, but then they turn around and see it on a phone. I thought about that the other day. Yeah, I mean, think about this. Do you remember when you had your first cell phone?
Yeah, I was
What grade were
43
you
years
in?
old.
Yeah, what grade were you in then?
old.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what grade were you in?
Yeah,
So, uh,
I told that to my kids, and they're like, "Dude, what's wrong with you?" But
yeah.
I mean, they carried one with the city. That was enough.
Well,
But yeah, I finally
walk up and
broke
hand.
down and bought one
Yeah, I mean,
without.
walk up and hand one a pager today and see what they do with it.
Yeah.
I didn't
Oh
like my
man.
first page. Look, I didn't like my first pager because I just didn't. I was kind of getting used to it. It was good. I thought I was getting used to it. And one day, I'm out on the lawnmower and I'm riding around on the riding lawnmower and I'm cutting grass, and all of a sudden, I feel this vibration in my belt, and I thought a bee or something got in there. And I forgot all about the pager. I started smacking it, and when I did, I popped it up in the air and ran over top of it with the lawnmower. I was like, oh, oh man, dear, dear sheriff, dear sheriff, you ain't gonna believe this.
You see what had
Yeah,
happened was.
yeah. What happened was, I wasn't really running like you told me because I wasn't running. I was just walking fast. Yeah, but live and learn, right? And I was like, man, I knew I had that on there. Why did I do that? But again, I can laugh at it now, but back then all I could do is shake my head. It's like my first
Oh
cell
yeah.
phone. Well, it's probably my first cell phone. I did real well with it until one day I reached over into the pool to get something, and all of a sudden I saw my cell phone life go before my eyes, and into the pool it went. Pulled it out real fast. It worked for 2 days. I thought I'd won the battle, and all of a sudden 2 days later, it didn't come back on. It was done. I was like, man.
Uh-oh.
So I had to go get it. So it's things that we learn, even with the media. I mean, think about now. But a child now takes the phone out, they lose it. Where's my iPhone? Boom, click. Oh, there it is. Let me go find it. Oh, let me call law enforcement. Go pick it up.
Or ask
It's a
their friend
great feature.
Siri.
Yeah, but where would but my thing is, where would this generation of children be now if they didn't have the cell phones? If you walked in there today and walked in and said all cell phones gone, what would this population do now?
They would lose their mind,
Yeah,
literally.
because instant gratification, right? Everything's instant gratification.
Yeah.
Nothing. You don't have to wait for anything. It's in the book I'm writing. I talk about it. It's what I've coined. That was called the fingertip generation. Everything is at the fingertips.
Yeah.
You just don't do anything. Don't think about, oh, what's that answer? Let me tip it. Oh, I want something to eat. Oh, let me
Yeah.
just use my fingertips. Oh, I
Yeah.
mean,
Bring it to me.
yeah, exactly. Oh man, keys out up under the mat, delivery guy. Just walk on in. I'm sitting on the couch. I'll be the one. Yeah, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I laugh about it, but it's pretty sad because what happens when the power grid goes down? They don't have any electric. They can't plug their computer up. There's no batteries, and somebody says, "I need you to do this," and it has to part of a written administrative skill set, and you hand them a pen and a paper, and what it's not,
And
it's not. And seeing
tell them
here,
to write it in cursive.
right, and don't exactly, yeah. It's like, what's that? But
Exactly.
but don't think other countries aren't sitting there thinking the same thing that you and I are just talking about. Take it away from them, and what happens?
Mhm.
They're gone. They can't do anything. So, but this is our future generation. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to bash on the younger generation, but they're going to have to really pay attention to these power grids and what's going on around and what's around them.
Mhm.
It's not only going to be about instant gratification. There's a lot of work. I mean, when you look at this, we got an investigation going on here. They got theirs going on out there in the other two states. And this is the first time they tried to hit Randolph County too in North Carolina. So I think it's kind of odd the two far states, and you got two places in here. So it's like hit two spots here, hit five spots there, and then two spots in another state. So when you look at that, I mean, you're really looking at nine spots that they've targeted.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, who are they?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Who are they? I'd be, I don't want to say who it's not going to be because I think right now it could be anybody. Yeah, and think
Right.
about that. That's you know, they've got all these people they put in jail and they do all these things and they hold them there and they don't charge them with anything. And all these DAs now that go in there and go, well, we're not charging them. We're gonna let them go. We're gonna let them walk and things like that. Moore County, Randolph County, I believe they're a little bit more conservative counties than most, and than a lot of the counties in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same sense, I think if you go in even to the more liberal counties and you take out their power grid, you're gonna have a lot of folks there that's just they're gonna be all to themselves and not be happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is there's always that double standard depending on where you live. Are they gonna reach out and hug them into sincerity, or would they be ticked? I think they'd be like, are they gonna hug them to happiness, so to speak? But you take your little communities where you got thousands of people, that's a big difference. So my thought was this is wow, if it is somebody local, they better hope the feds get to them before the local boys do. Because it's a whole different world. Some of these counties, just like in Georgia, just like in Florida, all these places you would think that are jumping up and they're so far advanced, and they are. But when you start messing with things like that, people get irritable and don't think the terrorists don't know it. That's just the way it is. Um, when you look at terror, Charlotte, we talked about this before. Charlotte's a hub for terror, and they have been. And a lot of people don't realize that it's kind of odd because they were using baby formula to 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 bring in their drugs previously, and they make the money off of that, and it's was Sheikh Khalil, the one that was the mastermind for 911. You know, he was a big sponsor of that. He went to college right here in North Carolina. A lot of people don't know that, and it's all in my notes. And last time I read those notes were probably about 6, 7 years ago. So I don't know. I can't remember what school he went to. I want to say it was like Winston-Salem or somewhere, but it was somewhere really local. And he got his education here. And they turned Charlotte into a big hub for terrorism, where people were coming through there and they weren't even thinking about it because who would think Charlotte would be the place to go? Charlotte was the place where they would do, they'd put cigarettes through there from state to state. And we think, well, that's small time. That's a small game for terrorism. But really, it's actually pretty smart in them because nobody's looking for them in those travels.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes up. So, when you talk about say something or see something and say something, the public's not really educated on those things. And I think sometimes we as law enforcement keep things close to our chest when they really need to be putting it out there because that may even run somebody away from doing it. But in these power grids and things like this, it's just a new world for people because I don't think they know what we've known all along. To take out the power here, schoolhouse here, um, hospital here, retirement center there. I mean, these are hard targets. These are places they can get to. And now what happens if they do that when they knock out the power grid? See, now it's getting into more of that terrorism that takes over the community, and it's just too late to do anything. So I think we as law enforcement, or previously wasn't, we don't do really well about telling people what to really look for. We tell them see something, say something. The only thing they start looking for is packages that may have an explosive in it.
Mm-hmm.
Are they looking at, or do they look at behaviors? What is the behavior? Oh, you look at a behavior now, you might be profiling somebody. You got to be careful. So we tell people you can't profile anybody, but then we're supposed to look at the behavior. So if somebody in the airport's looking at that and there's a behavior and you report it, then you got to wait a few minutes to find out if you did a good job or what you're going to be accused of, it's a double-edged sword, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah.
So I mean, last time I flew was, But
Yeah.
so tell me what do you got going on lately? What are you looking to? I mean, just in general, what are your hobbies and stuff now? Like we as cops, we
Well,
always have to have some kind of hobbies. I was
well
looking at some race cars again, so.
I'm too old for. Well, actually, I want to brag for a second because
Mhm.
I mean, you've known me almost, but my son Chase is now a law enforcement officer,
Mhm.
um, and kind of look at law enforcement a little different now. Um,
Mhm.
when I went to work, and I never thought about, oh, am I going to make it home to, in the morning, I never thought about stuff like that. But I sure as heck think about it with him now. Watch and
Mhm.
say, oh crap, Chase is working tonight. Hang on, let me pray real quick. Yeah,
Mhm.
say
Oh yeah.
prayer and ask, God to please put his hand on him and protect him and everybody else. Um, man, it makes you look at things a lot different in the police world. And
Mhm.
I really am. I'm tickled to death he chose to do that. It's I'm in the world to me, and I think he kind of feels the same way. So, but yeah, I learn now, and
Mhm.
just yeah, now I see what my mom went through as far as worrying about me out there. I was just out there having fun, working the greatest job ever. They were sitting at home
Mhm.
worrying, God, I hope he don't get shot tonight. I hope he comes home in one
Mhm.
piece. So I'm wearing a different set of shoes now. You know, I'm walking a
Oh
mile
yeah.
in their shoes.
Well, it
Yeah.
makes you. It does make you realize that some of the things, if they see some of the things you did, the spots we may have been in, if they get into it, you're like, oh shoot, and things are even just as bad now, not worse. The way things going on,
Uh
and
huh.
you sit there and you think about it. Because I remember a night when I got called to a call, and off-duty police officer was, I think it was off-duty police officer at the time. It might have been still been a deputy. Called, walked into a convenience store and found a man behind the counters or somewhere
Oh,
and shot inside the store. You remember who that was?
I do. My honeymoon that night,
Yeah.
and man, that still bothers me. That was like 1987,
Hmm.
and Zach's Mini Mart right there
Hmm.
and yeah, that hurt my feelings. He was a good man. He did not, but yeah, that scared the
Right.
heck out of me.
Well, it
Yes,
did, and
you never know what you're gonna.
oh yeah,
You never
because
know.
well, like I said, I say that because the viewers how lives cross in the profession that we're in, which we later
Mm-hmm.
became friends. The whole process. Anyway, we were friends then. But the
Mm-hmm.
thing about it was is you can be in your own world one minute, whether you're working or not, and right middle of a storm, a hailstorm,
Mm-hmm.
instantly. And I think that's the thing that, from a law enforcement perspective, is that I always tell everybody it's a job that you can go from 0 to 100 in a millisecond. You're
Amen.
sitting in your car, you're sitting in your car, and all of a sudden something happens, and you're riding, you're getting there, you get to where you got to go. Now all of a sudden you're on foot, you're chasing, you're tackling, you're fighting, you're trying to cuff, you getting done, you're exhausted, you're tired, and you do that in a lifetime. How many times you can't even count.
Can you count
So I
them?
always
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So I always tell people, one thing that we don't realize, I think people, is that being in law enforcement, your body breaks down. That's a lot of the big thing about as you get older. You feel it. You can't run as fast and can't get up as quick, and your knees hurt and your ankles hurt. Your back hurts. You get a sciatic nerve that because you wear the gun belt. How many cops do you know that
Uh-huh.
have the sciatic nerve problem?
I've had
Because they
4 back surgeries. I know all about it.
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, people don't
Yeah.
realize the residual of it is that you're going to be hurting later on,
Mhm.
paying for those things that you did that you
Yeah.
needed to do. So
Yeah.
it does take a toll on the body and things like that. I think if one thing I tell the young officer we were talking about earlier, and I would tell Chase the same thing is be smart. Be smart. Don't do things that don't push yourself to a limit. If it's a life, if it's fighting for your life, absolutely. But be smart. Do
Mm-hmm.
what you got to do. Keep everything like you need to be, because when you get 60 years old, you might want to use it again, and
Yeah.
it might actually give you a little pain when you do. But you had
Yeah.
that back or that arm or something like now. I mean, it's just so I think, but it gets back
Yeah.
to
They
your.
I was going to say they've come a long ways though with the new that take the load off your waist, and
Mm-hmm,
everything's carried on that vest. For his generation,
mm-hmm.
hopefully he won't deal with the backaches and the leg ache we have to deal with. But
Yeah,
I'm glad
tell him.
to see the equipment. Yes, sir.
Well, next time you see him, tell him, and you're welcome, because we went before you, so they can fix it, so y'all could get a little better feeling with it.
We were
But
those test dummies.
yeah. So exactly. So here's and you think about it is, if you think about your car and whatever you drive, and that car goes from 0 to 100, 0 to 100, 0 to 100. You have to change the oil. You have to do all the things, but sooner or later, if you don't, that car is going to have to start having big problems, and that's metal. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about the human body, which is an amazing thing, because when you compare between the two, the same similarities is, what does a car have to have? It has to run? It has to have energy, has to have water. What do we have to have? Energy and water. And most people don't think about that. So when your body, if you compare your body to your car, the same thing happens, is that, if you don't take care of your car, it won't be there long to take care of you. So as we've learned through life, is you have to take care of yourself. And I always tell officers, I say, if I had to give the best advices for anybody is, stay alive, be alert, know your skill set, um, know your limitations,
Mm-hmm.
and stick with that. And then know everybody else's limitations, so it's when the time for them to run in and do what needs to be done. One of the things that, and too, with law enforcement is, it's like anything else. Um, you can kind of get in there, and what you see is, I may go out there and I do a great job, but there's a point in your career in law enforcement. There are certain roles that you can assume and duties that you can take on that, that you can do gracefully, and areas that you're actually needed in, that people are needing those areas. I was 37 years old when I walked in and decided I didn't want to be on a SWAT team anymore. Why? Because when I started looking up and them young boys were coming in behind me and them young bucks coming in, and I realized that, I'm 3 steps in the door and they're next to me, just off the shooting. And I'm finding myself that I'm having to take the back position to go in. I thought, okay, smart is as smart is. Um, and I went and talked to somebody, and I said, hey, what would I know what I want to do? And, but there's people here older than me and they're not stepping to the side. And I thought, that's kind of how, that's just not good, because the reality is some of the folks, and it's not age discrimination. I'm talking about myself. So at 37, I just said, when I looked at over half of the people were faster than I am, I was more concerned about, wait a minute, if I can't get in there fast enough and I can't do it, that split second is going to count for somebody. And I've done my time. I think I did 8 or 9 years. I've done my time. It's time to know, as law enforcement officers, know your limitations. And that's what I tell officers today is, do the best job you can, but know where your limitations lie, and know when to let somebody else take over to the next level, because you're not going to be young forever, and they are, you know.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we don't want to hear that in life for anything, but sometimes you have to. I'm not walking around on a walker or nothing, but still, I feel I still to get around pretty good and feel pretty good. But law enforcement's a tough line. I mean, it's a real tough experience. You remember the night that we were working over on was over on the boulevard?
Oh
You
yeah.
remember?
They park.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
supposed to be a happy
yeah,
occasion, right?
yeah. Yeah,
Or
that was.
you broke the cardinal rule of not saying, "Hey, man, it's quiet out here tonight."
I did
Because
too, didn't I?
roughly a minute late, less than a minute later,
You're in the
it
middle of a
sounded loud.
shootout.
I thought we was watching Saving Private Ryan. Man,
I shouldn't be laughing at
you,
that, but
you remember all the bullets? I mean, that was just amazing. I mean, it was
yeah,
crazy. And what do stupid people do? They get out of a car and they run into
yeah,
where
yeah.
everybody else is running. Yeah,
What happened? What
that
happens
was
when?
interesting.
Well, I think for the viewers here, you again, law enforcement goes from 0 to 100 on a millisecond, and Jerry and myself were just kind of casually talking. We were working there, and I said, "Boy, it sure is quiet here. It's not bad as I thought it was." And Jerry said, "Yeah, well, watch that crowd there, and watch that guy over there." And we're looking, and it wasn't no time. Like you said, maybe a minute, maybe not even half a minute.
Yeah,
We heard
yeah.
heard the shots fired from the inside, and then all heck broke loose, and then it was shots, and everywhere. And anyway, long story short, I'm looking for who might be shooting in the direction, and the windshield next to me on somebody else's Explorer got got shot out, and I'm just like, well, that was interesting. Well,
That
where do
was
you go,
close.
right? Yeah, it was close. I'm like, well, it's time to find out, find out where that's coming from. And it was kind of weird because what happened is there was shooting coming from all different directions because like everybody started pulling out their guns then. So, and I say that because um, you try to stay together as law enforcement officers when you're in those situations. But unfortunately, time and what we have going on didn't kind of allow that for either one of us. We kind of got separated when Jerry was going one way and I was going another, and by the time we were able to kind of mount back up and catch up and find out where the other one was, I think they counted there was what I was over 60 or 70 shots fired that night. By the time everybody started,
Casings on the ground.
yeah, a lot of cases it looked like glitter out on the dark ground out there. So, but it just adds to the fact that law enforcement was dangerous then, and law enforcement is extremely dangerous now. And I salute these guys out there. I mean, I tell you, these law enforcement officers have a tough job each and every day. And like Jerry said, his son's in it, and I know so many people out there that are still in it. But they face some really hard things each day that they have to deal with, and plus they're walking around and. We didn't have to worry about it then, but people to walk around throwing cameras in your face and calling you names and trying to get you to do or say or acting in a way that is unprofessional or just the thing about it is you just have to be that rock out there, that foundation for society to see that somebody wants to emulate, as opposed to somebody just you know you don't want to be out there doing and acting in a way, because whatever you do and say and how you act is going to label you really fast. That's just a fact. So I'm just giving some 101 lessons to the new guys. And I think we got some great officers out there right now. So I'm not bad mouthing any. I'm just saying that as you come into it, the public knows that they have good guys out there and ladies, to be correct. Um, the bottom line is the officers are all respected for the most part. It's just that when you get out in certain areas, you're going to feel a lot of disrespect. Um, the old generation, the old way of doing things aren't there. Again, everything is social media. So and they see it on and people see it on social media and they hear it. And a lot of times it's the only thing they hear or see. Nobody actually has a conversation with somebody. So you have to convince them by your actions that you're in law enforcement and you're a rock, you're a foundation for society, and you're there to protect them. And and it's just like when you walk into a restaurant and somebody says, "You see that?" Tells their children, "You see that policeman over there? If you're not good, we're gonna go take you to him, or he's gonna come over here and take you to jail."
Mm-hmm.
Well, I used to say when they do that, and I say, "No," I was who I was. I said, "No, we're not taking anybody to jail. We're here to help people. We don't take children to jail. We teach them the right things to do." and we want them to do the right things. So I'd always break it down and say, yeah, we're not here. But how many out there viewing now ever looked at their child and said, "You see it? I'm gonna call. You're going to go to jail." Well, you might be able to do that, but it kind of like terrorizes a child. And some people are like, "Well, that's what I tell mine." But the reality is that's that's not a good thing. I might have told mine take him to the gates of the prison, was going to throw him out there and pick him up in 20 years or something, maybe. But I never threatened to take him to jail. So, I'm just kidding, everybody. Don't be sending me nasty grams. But um, my child would say, "No, he's not kidding. He did it." So, no, I was. I have a very dry sense of humor sometimes. That's some people don't know. It's cop humor. I tell somebody the other day, we as law enforcement officers, we have a certain sense of kind of a humor, and it's very dry at times that we can only understand and figure it out. It's not something that you would stay into the general crowd or something, but you never know. I think sometimes that's what we deal with. That's how we deal with things. So when you say so, Jerry,
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah,
We
yeah, because
used humor a lot of times when it was a price and to get people to, you know, stop yelling for a minute and just stop and say, take a minute to smile.
yeah.
It's worked many a times at disturbance calls and so on. So yeah, we do
Well, you got to be
what we
real.
got to do.
Yeah, well, you have to be real, and that's why I think this is one I want to just talk about law enforcement in general. Not everything that's going on is bad. Everything that's going on here and there, but I think in general, I think people need to know who their law enforcement officers are. And I think now, and what I'm really trying to do on some of these shows is I want to interview law enforcement officers. And it's kind of tough to do the current active ones because the policies won't let them get on and do any kind of interviews about their activities or even to the good things they're doing without some kind of consent. And it does make it tough on them because what they say again can be construed to something that was it was completely out of context. So
Mhm.
they can't get on here and just start spouting and saying well they can, but you see what happens nationally sometimes. So I feel for those that wear the uniform right now because it's a very very hard way to go. And things aren't getting any easier. You think about the quote unquote summer of love, all that nonsense that went on and how many officers were ambushed and killed through that time. You know,
Mhm.
they had families. I mean, they had lives that were snuffed out because of one-sided politics that wanted to sell a false narrative on what was going on for a smokescreen so
Yeah.
they could continue the bad that was going on. Yeah, I said it. Sorry, no, I said it. And that's a fact. So, everybody that listens to me knows that I tell it like it is from that standpoint. But, there's nothing more frustrating to see is that this defund the police movement that we went through. And they're still don't kid yourself out there. They're still doing the defund the police. They call it budgets, cutting your budget. That's where you start defunding your police.
Mhm.
And the only thing is they just labeled it and they become more violent with it. That defund the police movement's always been there. There's always been that certain group that wants to defund the police and not give them the tools and the equipment, any kind of things that they need to get things done. So the defund the police was not new, not new now, wasn't new then. Excuse me. So the defund the police was. I remember I wrote a letter one time to the county commissioners, and it made it into the newspaper. Um, and it was about one of the commissioners that was pretty much not wanting to fund some of the patrol cars. They didn't want to fund some of the equipment. They didn't want to fund for bulletproof vests. And this is back in the 80s.
Mhm.
So it was like so defund the police was back then. They just didn't call it that. They called it going after the budgets. Here
Mhm.
they just made it more violent, and they have a more organized effort by hate groups. That get out there. Um, Speaking of the hate groups, you see where the Twitter has shown that the hate group activities has gone way down and the membership has gone up. Some of those hate groups got banned, and they're not really happy about it.
Mm.
But they were left on there uncensored to do and act and say what they wanted to do. And now they've been told, no, hey, all that's not going to be on here. And the numbers are picking up. The communication is that I saw today where the government decided they're trying to go after Elon Musk for all kinds of things now. That, remember, it was okay to let Twitter run roughshod, when it was owned by Dorsey and that group. Now that Musk has it, now everybody wants to be all up in arms. See, the tides have changed. So the other side, the left side now is about to come through the roof because they're no longer in control of hate speech. And it sounds as harsh as it is, but they were in control of the hate speech, but then want to target everybody else for it. So it does have its effect. So these thing of censorship is it's a dangerous. There are certain things I think that should be challenged. If it's a knowing false allegation that is designed to hurt somebody or kill somebody or do anything like that, yeah, I think that has to be reviewed, and really be careful before you start taking anything off. But the reality is, I've seen some things said and done that I knew for a fact, even before Twitter came along, that should have never been said, never should have been done, because there was no validity to that, whatever that topic was. And we call that credibility in law enforcement. So there has to be a certain amount of credibility. And I think that for Twitter now, it seems to me that the credibility is it looks like that Twitter's leaning toward the credibility part of it now, because they are kicking all this nonsense out, and more so, they've actually opened up more doors for people to come in. I will tell you today, I got hit with a Twitter violation today myself. And I'm thinking, what? Yeah, and it wasn't. It was something that I saw on. I think I shared off YouTube, and it was something that I thought was very motivational, but it had somebody's music in there. So Twitter sent me a copyright violation. You know that would be the whole things. For me is like, okay, well, that's kind of a. But they did tell me what it was. I kind of figured it out on my own. What it was. It was like, okay, well, maybe it's it's just one of those things that we'll maybe they send this little notification that says, hey, don't do it anymore, but then it goes, oh, now click to the next button, click the next button. They weren't going to let me back on until I agreed to the terms that I apparently already agreed to one time. I'm like, dang. So how do I know what I can put out there and what I can't? It was just a song. I'm like, oh, that would just, that would not be good. Get kicked off of Twitter. I'm like, man, I got kicked. I think, well, they got me one time where I couldn't make any comments or anything for something I said. It was like, you can't make any comments. You can't you can't share. You can't do anything but look at it. You can get on there and look at it, and they make you think you're doing something, but it doesn't post. It doesn't do anything in it. And they only did that for 24 hours. But I thought, wow, I've been putting in Twitter jail. No bail in Twitter jail. That's sad. And then I haven't been put in Twitter jail on Facebook, but I have been putting time out because I couldn't post anything. But I could go around and check everything. It's like, so once on Twitter, once on Facebook. What can you say? But I tell people all the time, though, if you're on Facebook because that's your life, then you really need to put it all down. Because there's people on Facebook that think it's their entire life. And these are people they haven't even met. There's people you hadn't met. Start talking to people, seeing people, getting away from that environment, and you'll find out, I was like anybody else. especially when I was running for office, I'd be hitting Facebook, Twitter, checking all the things to kind of stay on top of things. But then it got to a point, I'm like, okay, screen time. They start telling you how much screen time you're on there, and you go, oh, wow, that's crazy. And now I look at it and it says screen time 40 minutes a day. I'm like, well, when I was running for office, screen time was like 4 hours a day. And that was on the run because, I mean, I was answering everybody, contacting people.
Mhm.
But, when you're not in that mode, you don't have to sit there and look at it. And it's now like, yeah, I'll check it later. Yeah. I just sometimes have to turn off the notifications because they're one right after another. I get notifications, and at the same time, I'm trying to check my emails. I'm having to be quick on my emails so the notifications don't get me to open up the program. I thought, well, I got to learn how to turn them things off. But yeah, so I mean, you can't do it so much, and you don't want to just sit there and keep going on something that's just going to take that much time because life does go on, and I think sometimes people get so far wrapped up in the all the social elements of what we do, that whether it's social networking or whatnot, I think we got to sometimes stop and smell the roses and look around and find out, oh wow, the roses are still in the bushes. Oh, they are still bushes there. I've been walking by them bad boys. So and then take a little time for family, you know. So
Right.
but anyway, but I know your family had been so long ago. You had one get married too, didn't you?
Yeah, Chase. He just got married in September.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't get the invite. My feelings were hurt. I think I'm still crying about that.
It's okay.
Oh, it's okay. That's all
It
right.
was small.
That's one.
It
That's
was
one less.
family.
Less.
Yeah, you
That's
know.
one less wedding gift I had to buy. It's just, you know,
It was
I
beautiful.
always laugh. Well, I always laugh at people when I'm kidding about it. I always walk up to them, man, I didn't get an invite, and they go, well, I didn't know. Then I look at them and go, I buy really nice wedding gifts too. Wow. So, and they're like, dang,
Yeah.
even to me, it may turn, but it's. I always love that when somebody has a wedding. I go, well, I didn't get invited, and they kind of look at you like, look, when you're getting married, there's a lot going on when somebody's getting married, and
Oh yeah.
that's you could you'd have to rent a big Carnegie Hall to fill everybody in there. You got to cut a limit somewhere somehow, you know. But it is what it
Yeah, that's
is.
true.
So what are you thinking on your future goals? What are you looking at now? What are you thinking about?
Man, um, just surviving, I guess. um, yeah, nothing huge. The job I got, and I work for a great organization. They're super good people. I'm very happy there. Um, making it to retirement and moving my goal. that's
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
what Michelle and I both want to do is
Right,
get get to the place where we can buy us a nice place and just settle down there, and
right.
hopefully not too far down the road so we can enjoy it before we get to it. So that's the
Yeah.
plans. We really love the beach when we go down there, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No doubt.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're
well,
part.
I took. Well, retirement is good if you stay retired. If you don't pick up something, I stay so busy. I don't know what retirement looks like. So,
Man,
I,
yeah.
I,
Well,
I was retired. I was retired for 3 days.
for 3 days.
That's the 3 days. I took 3 days off and I went right straight to work. So I was like, okay, I won't ever forget. I was down at the beach. I'm like, well, man, it feels good to be retired. Come Monday morning, I was going to work and I was like, boy, that retirement didn't last long, did it? Yeah. So, but
It's
any,
overrated.
well, it's like I tell anybody else. You can be as busy as you want to be,
Hmm.
um, as long as you, you know, as long as you enjoy yourself. You know, when I came out of retirement the second time, I think that's what I said the second time. I was sitting there watching Netflix early morning, drinking a cup of coffee, and the man called me and said, what are you doing? And I told him. He goes, you ready to get your butt back to work? Except he didn't say it as gingerly as I just said it. And I hung up on him. He called back. Did you hang up on me? I said, yeah, bro. Don't you ever call me again and use that 4-letter word. That 4-letter words ain't good around my house. I said, my wife's a Sunday school teacher. We don't use those kind of words around here. He said, I only said work. I said, and I hung up again. He called me back. He goes, what the heck? I said, yeah. I said, don't cuss me no more. He said, I didn't do it. I just asked you. I said, don't say it. He goes, oh, that 4-letter word. It's like, yeah. So, it's kind of comical. I was like, man, so I'm sitting there watching Netflix. I said, matter of fact, you called me. I'm right in the middle of a show right now. I said, so what you got? And then we started. I was just kidding with him. But he got me back at it again, and I've been going ever since. So it's been a pretty busy time this year. But it's just those things that we do in retirement. I mean, I've kind of like picked up, doing the YouTube things, and then doing the podcast. The podcast is I'm really trying to kind of open up the venue a little bit to other things. So it's not always politics. It's whatever I want to talk about, whatever people want to talk about. If somebody calls me and says, hey, I got a great idea for a show, we can do the show. It's not going to be long. I think I was telling you a little bit earlier. I'm going to interview Dean Nicopolis before long. And, that was Elvis Presley's personal assistant. And he worked with Elvis until Elvis passed away. And Dean's in the process of writing a book, and it's something that it wasn't something that he was going to do. I think so many people talked to him about doing it, but he's got so many stories, and and I think it's going to be a great book because it's going to say and tell things that nobody ever knew, the public knew about. The great things that Elvis was doing, that it was always kept private. That was between like Elvis and his God, the things that he wanted to do for why he wanted to do them. And and like Dean says, he was blessed and lucky enough to be there to see it. And now that would be a ringside seat. That would be just, and I tell you, so when we as law enforcement officers, we understand the good, the bad out there that goes on in life. But you take somebody that's whatever their position is, who they work for, don't work for. I mean, that's a different way of life. That's a totally different way of life for them. But when somebody says, it was a normal life for us, it was a normal life for me, and every day was great because I just never heard or seen anything that was detrimental. It wasn't like he says like I didn't have to go do things the cops do, and he was talking about how, and I say this, he was talking about how Elvis loved law enforcement officers, how he related to law enforcement, things like that. So when you talk to Dean, you get a little of that law enforcement perspective too. So I'm gonna have him on the show to talk about it. Dean's got he's got his own seasonings, and so he's doing his own seasonings now, and I know he's working on that book, trying to get it out there. And just a great guy. I mean, he's a. I'll have to maybe I'll get you on the same show when he's on here. That'll be a great show, and we can have the conversation that I've been wanting to have. It's all more about timing right now with so much going on and things going on, and I talk about some of the future shows. I talked to Sheriff Joe Arpaio not so long ago, and I know I'm going to get in. He's going to do a show here too. So there's some more that I've had conversation with that'll be kind of some surprises along the way. And I'm fortunate enough that I'm able to get some of these contacts through some of the folks here, going through the different networks like nextgenusa.com. It's been good because I can get pretty much anybody I want to through Rory, who handles the whole process for this. And big thank you to Rory out there for getting this network started. It's been really good. It's been good for the podcast. It's been good for the different things that we're doing along the way. And I think that there's so much up there that we can still do. that we can still keep true to the politics, but we can keep true to some other things and branch out a little bit. And then, what's good. I always talk about it is what's good for the country, what's good for the county, what's good for the state, what's good for the family. What's the overall good about what we're doing, and that's where we have to identify the difference from what other people do. Because there's so much bad and ugly out there that if we don't try to do good, who's going to do it? If not us, then who? You know, and I think it
Yeah.
teaches our children and future generations of children the same thing.
Right.
And I know you'll have some grandchildren running around before long.
Hope so.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. I've got, I've
I'm very,
got, um, I've got, well, I've got another granddaughter on the way, so we're really excited
congratulations.
about that. Yeah, we got a granddaughter on the way, so we're really excited about that. And you know, it's just, yeah, we love grandchildren. We're looking forward to the grandchildren. And yeah, as you know, we love our granddaughter too because we go on vacation. She likes to go with us too. But everything
Mm.
that I think about, anything that goes on in life, it always gets back to
Mm.
family. And I think if we don't do what we need to do and say and act for our family, who will we do it for?
Mhm.
It's got to be family first and foremost, and that's just the way it is. And when you get out there, try to make the right decisions in the right way. It gets back, lend yourself to what we do from law enforcement perspective. Because I look back in my career, as I'm sure you look at yours. If you had to look in your law enforcement career, I'm gonna put you on the spot right now. What do
Uh-oh.
you think? What do you think? What do you think was the biggest moment, other than when you were working traffic at the game and you ended up flat on your back with the what they determined was what was it, a heart attack? Was it a form of a heart attack? It was a
It's called
what
sudden
was it?
cardiac death. Sudden cardiac stops for no reason.
Well, that's a heart attack to
And
me.
when the electrical rhythm and the pumping
Yeah.
motion and all that, but yeah, that was it. So that was a biggie. Oh man, um, you know, really bothered. There's a few calls that bothered me, but one of them really me enough that on the weekends now I've hooked up with an organization called Street Safe, uh, Life Saving Driving Experience, and a bunch of officers uh, put this class on, and we teach about distracted driving and how driving and texting and can get you killed, and we tell stories and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But first days in my patrol career, I heard a big loud boom. I was on through a turn. It sounded like an explosion, and I saw a car. Um, and, and in fact, the car hit the tree so hard that the tree was at the front windshield of the car, completely, just knocked the engine out from under the car. But I saw 3 people in there, and I jumped in the car, and 2 of them were. I tried to check on them, check pulses and all that, and I mean, Lee was right there and held on to both of them as they took their last breath, and they were both 17 years old. And that and I had to tell the parents, I was in on that too, and well, and more messed up. One of the kids in the car that died was a exchange student. He come over here to America to attend Jordan High School for a year, and the host, the girl who was driving the car, who also was killed. Um, yeah, so I'm going to make that call to France, telling them, your kid's been over in America one day, and now he's dead. That was a terrible day, man. And now my mom lives right up the road, and every time I go see her, I have to drive past that, and no
Mm-hmm.
joke, for you drive up Farrington Road that way because it just brought memories back, and man, that hurt my feelings. Just seeing how devastated the parents and all that. That stunk, and it comes with the territory, and those kind of calls you don't forget, man. In fact,
Mm-mm.
the first call I ever answered the sheriff's office was a 21-year-old overdosed, and yeah, I shouldn't to go do a death notification, and I was like,
Yeah.
well, who's going with me? And they're go do it on your own. You by yourself now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to go let parents know their 21-year-old at home. And so, yeah, that one still stays in my head because all on my own when I became a deputy. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, man,
They're out there.
most of the rest of the career was happier. It was
Yeah.
positive things, but that definitely were two really negative situations that I still remember. Like, one of them happened in '87, and the other one was in '93. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but they still seem. I know you don't never talk about it, but I know that experience out there and shot. I know you. It seems like that was yesterday in your
Oh yeah.
mind. Stuff never leaves,
Yeah.
man. I saw a T-shirt on Facebook. Is that I wish my get what my eyes have
Hey,
seen.
slide over a little bit. You move away from your camera. There you go.
Okay, I said I wish my mind could forget what my eyes have seen, and that pretty much sums it up. Sometimes. So
Yeah.
yeah, man.
It does. It makes it tough. And full disclosure, um, well, there's some things I went through that, I, one of the things I think that it's always been when you go to a call, it's you do all that you can do. You got it all together and you get through that call. And then when you go finally sit down in your car and then you just realize what you've been through and all the hard charging, the adrenaline, everything that you've done, and you sit there and it's almost you're too tired to be exhausted,
Yeah,
but you're mentally drained, and now you got to
yeah,
write the report, and now you got to write the
yeah,
report. Oh man, and I think back too, and to kind of give, one of the incidents that I remember really really strong was probably the incident 2012 when 2 years before I retired, there was a shooting at the Outback Steakhouse, and the guy was at the Outback. He left there. Long story short, um, he ended up he ended up shooting. It was a high school football team. A bunch of them were coming in that were looking for scholarships, and they had been to Duke earlier, and they were going to Georgia, and then down to Florida. They were on the bus. And they were all taking their tour and all. And this guy who had flown in from Texas, um, he he came into the restaurant that night, and he had told them that you know basically he was in a foul mood. He was in Durham, and he wasn't going to take no junk off anybody, and um, he proved the point if he had to. He left there, and within 5 minutes, he ran up on about 8 or 9 football players from high school, and altercation broke out, and he pulled out a gun and shot one that was running away from him, shot the other one too, that shot him in the back, bullet lodged in his heart. Then he shot him again, shot him in his hip. So, I ended up over there. And long story short, the guy ended up, I mean, nobody there but me calling the backup. And then this young man, 18 years old, he's looking up, like, do something to save me, and you could tell, I mean, he knew he was in bad shape. And he kept looking up, and there was nothing to do but keep him treated for shock, wait for the EMS to get there, that whole thing. But still protect the area, because I found out later is the guy who shot him was standing off into one of the businesses over there watching. And had I made my back to him, he could come out and shot me while I was dealing with the victim. So it gets back to that training thing. And I remember going home that night after all this was over with. we ended up making arresting the guy and everything else, but the victim, he died. The second victim survived. He was later on convicted. But one of the biggest memories I remember anything was as he lay there dying, I heard his cell phone going off. And when I did, I looked to the right of him while I was trying to treat him. And the entire time, the cell phone was ringing and it was flashing the words mom, 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 mom. And I kept thinking, oh my God, somebody's going to have to tell his mother. And what had happened is one of the people that were there with him had already called his mother, and she already knew what had happened. So, for all that to go on, and then she's calling and nobody's answering. And of course, we're not going to answer the phone while we're in the middle of something too, but the phone now becomes part of the crime scene, you know. So you're not going to touch it anyway because it's not that it was used, but it's there because it's got to be processed like anything else. So I looked at all these things and I look back and I think somebody goes like, well, when you hear about PTSD, there's a lot of people out there that have PTSD that are law enforcement officers that have got out in law enforcement being they've retired,
Mm-hmm.
and some of them have taken the end that have ended their life because of some of the things that they saw. And I'm the type of person that I guess I kind of put I pigeonhole some of the things that say this is life. You have to deal with it. You can't let it drive you crazy. Move forward. And the book that I write, that I'm in the process of, well, I'm almost finished. It's maybe out next 2 3 months. I talk about those kind of things. I talk about law enforcement, but I talk about not turning out because of things, but in spite of things, and how to deal with things so they don't eat you alive. Now, will I tell you that I don't think about this young man June of every year when it happened, or that time of year when his Christmas comes around, and he's not there with his family and he's older? Would he have had any children? Would he have gone to college? Would he have gotten that scholarship? I probably would have never known him. But the person that you never known, that means the incident didn't happen in the first place. But the reality is it happened, and you have to think back. And I thought, wow. And I think that one of the things that taught me in anything is when I was sitting in my living room that morning, my son had come down to go to school. I want to say one of the few times that he went to school. Yeah, I shouldn't say, but yeah, and I say that joking. That's just joking.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I was sitting there and I got home that night and I got home about 4 o'clock in the morning and I was sitting there and just out of habit, I turned the TV on and sat down in a recliner and I'm watching television. And at that point, I had still not changed my clothes out or anything. Didn't even realize that I was still in the same clothes that I was there when I was helping this young man, trying to, do everything I could to save him. And I realized then when my son came down, he saw me go, he knew something happened. We had our conversation and he asked me, he said, what happened? What happened? And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, look. And of course, that's the way it was. But, and like I told him later in time, I said, what happened is that to me, I felt like a part of a generation of people kind of died. You know what I mean? Because when something happens, if you don't stop it and it continues and it continues and it continues, that cycle, you what do you do to stop the cycle? Well, you break the cycle by removing those elements in somebody's part of their life. But if you have somebody who's got a life ahead of them and everything looks good, and then you have somebody who's not part of a gang or anything, but is just spouting off because they want to be angry, where's that? That's not part of that cycle. It's just that it was a different. It wasn't your typical process of being, gangs involved or anything like that. It was totally different. So when I look back and I think one thing I learned out of that is that no matter where it comes in your life, I had made a statement that I've been fortunate that I've only had a few incidents that were really got close to me. And I made that statement probably about 3 months earlier. And even then I was thinking, well, I'm gonna retire in the next couple of years, and they always say just before you retire, something happens. You always heard just before you retire, something's going to get you and bring you back to reality, and it did. But long story short, we went to court. Um, we testified. I testified. Um, the jurors, when I was testifying, I looked at them, talked to them like I was what was going on, and there wasn't a dry eye in the jury. There was, and it was a little. There was a part too. They were talking about the phone where I actually had to kind of stop and tell myself, okay, suck it up and go through the story. You can't show a tear here. You got to go with it. So there was a time where I paused, and it wasn't that I was thinking. Is that my thinking was fine. It was being able to communicate my thought without tearing up because I needed to get through the story. So as law enforcement officers, people don't see that side of us. They see us hardcore. You make these decisions, but for an officer that doesn't feel it, for an officer that's stoic or cold about it, and can do it and not feel any of that, they're in the wrong business. They're in the wrong they need to be doing something else because this it is a career that you've got to truly believe in people. You have to truly believe in the good in people. Because if you didn't believe in nothing but bad in people, your life as a law enforcement officer would be you'd spiral pretty fast to the bottom. Because then, where would be the ruler? Where would be the guide for how to handle that kind of stuff? Because then you wouldn't have anything to look forward to for the betterment of the community or the people that you're dealing with. So for the law enforcement officers out there that might watch this, that I know will, always remember there's places that you can go and talk to people. And I know this sounds like a little counseling session in here today, but these shows are going to go different directions. This is not going to give you a standard show of we're going to talk this, this, and that. We're going to talk about issues that involve law enforcement officers, as Jerry talked about his side and some of the things that I talked about mine. That you guys out there will face each and every day. And the question is, how do you handle that? What do you do? What do you do to handle that? And I'll be honest with you, that's kind of the area of expertise that I used to work in with the sheriff's office for crisis intervention with officers and stuff, and to the community where we were able to assist and take care of things and get people in the right direction, talk to the right folks. And I still do that. And if I have an opportunity, if somebody calls me, I can usually get them in the right direction. And everything's always confidential. I don't go out and discuss who I've talked to and who I haven't talked to. So it is, part of that process. But always feel free to reach out to me. You can get me an email, which is free. I'm going to give you my it's rpadgett@sheriffpolice.com. You shoot me an email. You can also look up the website. You can contact me there. And, we can also look at where to direct you to talk to somebody. And I say that with all sincerity because we as law enforcement officers have to stick together. Whether you're retired, you're active, where you're coming new to the forces. But anyway, I'm glad that we had Jerry. I think his battery died on him on the setup, so he might not be his visual's not in there. So we hear his voice. Hey, Jerry, is that you? Is that somebody else?
No, man, it's me, but I'm gonna be gone in
that's good.
about any minute.
Well, that's fine, and we're going to conclude the show anyway. But like I said, I appreciate you coming and telling your story because that's what this show's about. I think this is a show for everybody here too. And like I said, we talked about the power grid, folks. Be alert, be vigilant, be mindful of what's going on around you. I don't say go out there and start searching all the power grids, but if you see strange cars, trucks, people, look, pick up the phone, call 911 and let them know. They'll check it out. They don't mind. That's what they're there for. We never minded, did we, Jerry?
Not at all.
There you go. Well, look, folks, I tell you, I'm going to sign the show off. Tell you, I appreciate you being here. And as I always say, always be real, always be safe, but more importantly, always be ready because you never know when the wolf is at your door. And folks, thank you for being here. We appreciate it and hope you have a great, great night, what's left of it, and even better weekend. Because I know some of y'all gonna be going to the beach or something. I may even have a joke or two for you next time. I probably will. Yeah, I might do that. So anyway, folks, have a great weekend. Enjoy yourself. Thanks for stopping in. Thanks for dropping in. And remember one thing: it's your America. It's bought and paid for by the blood of our American soldiers. It doesn't belong to the president. It doesn't belong to the White House. It doesn't belong to the Congress. It doesn't belong to the House of Representatives. It belongs to you. And who do they work for? They work for us. We put them in there, and we can take them out by our vote. Y'all have a great night. Have a great evening. Come back and see us next week. We'll probably be back here. Well, you know what I said. You want to make God laugh, tell him what you're going to do, right? So let's hope we're going to be here next week. So we're signing off. Have a great, great evening. And thank you for being here. And you law enforcement officers, if you need anything from me, you know how to get me. I'm only a phone call away.